This session is about behavior change. The previous two were not. We talked all around it. But this one's specifically about behavior change. You're going to see specific examples of how to use baby steps to change people's behaviors. I'm going to set some of the context by sharing with you how I view, this is how I view how behavior works. I know some of you are using it in your specific products and solutions, and I love that. That's part of what I want to do as an educator and a researcher is provide tools that help people think clearly about behavior and design for behavior change. Came in '93 to Stanford to study this question, which is all about how do you computerize persuasion. Oh, timer's going off. There we go. And looking at doing what I think is the first systematic set of experimental research to see if computers could indeed change attitudes and behaviors, and that was in the mid-'90s. Since then, the technology has always changed, but human psychology stays the same. So my belief is the more we can understand about human psychology, and can I get the slide up here from number 1? Thanks. The more we can apply that no matter what happens to the technology. And more in my lab, we're calling this overall approach behavior design. And I'm going to teach you a piece of behavior design. In fact, I think it's the most important thing. So I teach a 2-day boot camp on this. My sister and I also teach a 1-day master class. And from both of those events, the most important thing you can learn is what I'm going to teach you right now. And to set the stage, I want you to get the index card in the middle of your table. It's, I think, either yellow or blue. It's just an ordinary index card, 3 by 5. And if you had a magic wand that could influence your own behavior in any way that you want, start a behavior, stop a behavior, increase, decrease, what have you, if you had that magic wand, what behavior would you influence? How would you use that wish? Take about 35 seconds right now and write something down. It doesn't have to be super special, just anything you might want to influence. Ready? Go. Take about 10 more seconds. Everyone got something? Wouldn't this be nice? Woo. For me, a really hard behavior is actually meditating every day for over 30 minutes. That's probably what I would wish for. OK, here we go. Now, here's a technique I'm going to share with you. I use this often with big groups to help them understand what causes behavior. Feel free to use this technique. So let's imagine that your phone rings. The phone ringing is what I call a trigger. The ring is a trigger. It says, do it now. Okay, so you have a trigger going on, but you don't answer it. So you don't answer your phone. On the back of the card, write down a couple of reasons why you didn't answer the phone. Think about that in your past. Why didn't you answer the phone? Why didn't you do that behavior? For people standing up in the back, there's about 7 chairs here, and there's 5 along the side, so feel free to grab chairs. All right, you got it? So go with me here. Now, this is a thought experiment that I wished I had done in the '90s when I was a graduate student here at Stanford. If I just thought about behavior like this, I would have made far fewer mistakes in how I was thinking about things and doing things, and I'd be ahead of where I am now. But you learn things when you learn things. I like what Ronnie said, sometimes you're not ready to learn or take certain steps. So in your reasons that you wrote down that you didn't answer the phone, and I want you to raise your left hand. Notice I'm starting with left hand because I think raising your right hand sounds too like, swear in the Bible. Okay, raise your left hand if you wrote down a reason that had to do with you couldn't. You were in the shower, you were in a meeting, you were driving, and so on. Great, keep it up. Raise your right hand if the reason was more about you didn't want to. Oh, everyone, whoa, my gosh. I have never, wow, okay, put them all down. Woo! More than any other group, that right hand was really strong here. Okay, that's it. Those are the three elements that have to converge at the same moment for a behavior to occur. The behavior, in this case, answering the phone. If one of those things is missing, it won't happen. For example, if the trigger is missing, even though you're available and you're motivated, you're excited to get a call from somebody, you don't suddenly just go, hello, right? The trigger has to occur. So from my point of view, no behavior happens without a trigger. And I think you can map it out this way. And some of you have seen this. Some of you have worked with me in boot camps on it and so on. And the students, of course, know this. There's a level of motivation ranging from low to high. You have to be able to do the behavior. So, and you can map it out this way. And if the further you are to the upper right hand, when the trigger happens, the more likely you are to do it. And I see it. Motivation ability is trade-offs. You can have, if it's hard to do, you have to have high motivation to do it. If it's easy to do, and this is what this conference is about, if it's easy enough to do, you are right here. Let me bring out prop. Oh, here he is. OK, so let's say the behavior is call your mom. And he wants to, he may not be so excited about calling his mom, but if it's super easy to do, when he's triggered, he'll do it. And in contrast, if it's really hard to do, there's got to be a lot of motivation. And so baby steps lives here, and this is what I want to convey in this introduction to our speakers. Baby steps, if it's easy enough, you don't have to have a ton of motivation to get people to do stuff. It might be high, it might be low, but if you trigger people to do easy things, they can do it. Now, notice what happens with baby steps. I'll continue to use this. Let's say we want him to walk for 5 minutes a day. He's sedentary. Well, if we trigger it easy enough to do, he'll do it. After one day, it probably gets a little bit easier because he knows where to walk. After a few days, he might get in more shape, so it gets easier and easier, and he actually might get a little more motivated, so when it's triggered. Then you say walk for 10 minutes, a little bit harder, but he's still not below the threshold. If we say run a marathon, it suddenly became really hard. He's not doing it. Right, so the key with baby steps, and I need to write and create some videos and explain this more, but I think you can get this, is the baby steps is just make it so easy to do that they don't drop below the curve. And as they get more able to do it, either because he knows the walking path or he's in better shape or they have walking shoes, you can make it harder and harder, but what you don't do is tempt this curve, get them below the curve, so it requires a lot of motivation. That's how I think about baby steps, and that's one of the keys, I think, in behavior design is to trigger the right sequence of baby steps. You have to know what the right sequence is, and that's a challenge in and of itself. We'll hear some of that in this session, and you have to trigger those. The big leap approach, and we've all seen interventions trying to do that, right? We're going to have you do something really hard. Guess what? You might be able to get once, a few times, but when motivation, which is really slippery, when the motivation sags, they stop doing it. And if they stop doing it, it's not going to become a habit. So we'll talk more about habits tomorrow. This is the design space that I think is super interesting, and it's underexplored. So triggers, by definition, triggers succeed here, they fail here. And this is the overall model. The idea for behavior designers, at least how I see it, if something's hard to do and require lots of motivation, the key is not motivate more, make it easier to do. If we're asking people to donate $1,000 to Stanford, the development people are right in this building upstairs. I've done some work with them. Oh, what do? We show how great the football team is. We show how great the faculty is. Motivate. No, let's just scale it back to $10, and we'll get a lot more conversion. And that ended up being a winning strategy. Here, you can either motivate or make it easier to get over the threshold. I believe the right next step is making it easier to do. In other words, ability matters more than motivation. It's a more stable variable to design for, and it's less dependent on the whims of individuals and what's going on. So what I want you to do right now, we're going to take 4 minutes to do this, is to teach each other this simple model, and I'm going to demonstrate to you what I think is the most efficient way to do it. My goal in this is when you go back home and you're in some sort of meeting or some sort of opportunity where people are talking about behavior change, which is really too big a bucket to be talking about. But if people are getting confused about behavior, what I hope you'll do is step up to the whiteboard and say, in 2 minutes, let me explain how behavior works. And I'm going to model it for you right now. You ready? OK, I'll go. So behavior happens when 3 things come together at the same moment. There's some motivation. The person has the ability to do what we want them to do, donate $10 to Stanford. And then there's a trigger. The trigger is the call to action. That can be like an email. It can be a letter. It can be a phone call. We're saying, donate now. You can visualize it, motivation along this axis. Notice I'm writing out motivation. And it ranges from high to low. But that's not all. The other dimension is ability. It can be easy to do, or perhaps hard to do if we're asking people to donate $1,000. Now, if they love Stanford, we're asking for 10 bucks, they're right here. The behavior we want is donate 10 bucks, easy, they love Stanford. So when we trigger the behavior, it will happen. We'll get it done. However, if they don't like Stanford, if they're from Cal or somewhere else, and we're asking for 1,000 bucks, when we trigger the behavior, know how many times we can trigger and trigger and trigger, it's not going to happen. So there's a trade-off between ability and motivation. If we make it easy enough to do, even if they're so-so on Stanford, if we're just asking for 10 bucks or a pledge for $10, pledging is even easier than donating a year from now. When we trigger it, they'll say, yeah, I'll pledge a year from now. Where we don't want to be is right here. And wow, and try to motivate more and more and more. That's a losing proposition. Bam, let's sit down and talk about how behavior works and apply it to our stuff. You got it? In the interest of time, I'm going to have you pair up just in teams of 2. And you have yellow pieces of paper on your table. You also have some cards. If you flip those cards over, you'll see the behavior model. And I'm going to give each person 2 minutes to try to teach this to each other. Now, I have not baby-stepped you through this process. There's a way that I could say, figure out what your example is, draw this. I'm just kind of throwing you in. We'll see how it goes. I will chime you at 2 minutes, and that means you need to switch. So first of all, everybody have a partner? OK, on your mark, get set, go. All right, go ahead and switch now to the other person. Switch, switch. All right. How'd it go, people? Okay, good. I love the chatter. Let's come together now. You've heard me play ukulele, right? It sounds like good work. How'd it go? Okay? You got it? Okay, let's come together. Thank you. Wow. That was the fastest I've ever taught that. I kind of just threw you in. I did not baby step you through that. If you want to see more of how to teach that, Rock Health, I did a lecture for Rock Health about 6 weeks ago. There's a video, and I do the 2-minute thing. You can go watch that. I really think it's an important skill to get your team on the same page in terms of how behavior works. How many feel like you got it like 50% or so? Okay, good. So I hope you're confident enough when the moment comes up and people are getting confused about behavior, you'll say, well, here's how at least some crazy guy at Stanford thinks behavior works. Motivation, ability, triggers. Notice habits all live in this area that's easy to do, and there are fewer and fewer habits and hard to do. And if we're talking about health habits, what does that mean? Don't try to get people to do hard stuff. There you go. Okay, with that framing of how behavior works, I want to introduce Bernie Knobbe, who directs the benefits at Yahoo. And before that, he worked for a company called ACS, which is a Xerox company. I first met Bernie at a wellness event in North Carolina. Was that right? Yeah, and then we crossed paths again at Conference Board. So how many of you are pretty involved in the world of wellness and HR, company wellness? Yeah, this was something I was completely blind to 10 years ago. It's a really important area. And when I connected with Bernie, especially with some of the things they did at Yahoo, I was very excited to have him come and share what he's doing. So let's turn the slide set over to Bernie's computer, and everybody please welcome Bernie to the Mobile Health stage.
Thank you. I tend to speak up, so hopefully you can hear me. And it's an honor and a privilege to be on the Stanford University campus and to be associated with BJ. I'm just going to take a few minutes. As he said, that was the fastest he's ever done. His exercise, this is a 25-minute presentation I'm going to do in just over 10 minutes. And because Yahoo is a digital media company, as you all know, we have a short video that you have to watch as well, okay? So anyway, with that said, simplifying changes behavior. And that was the challenge that we had last year for our benefits open enrollment. Since this is health focused, I'll try to keep that in mind, but the reality is we need to engage people. We are not getting their attention, and the way that HR, and I'm one of those individuals in benefits, engage people is just not working in today's world. Everyone's carrying this, and we need to recognize that. So with that said, we put together a gamification last fall to try to raise awareness on our benefit programs. One of our biggest challenges was we always used to do it the same way. Emails, posters, printed materials. It worked. It was successful, people got enrolled, but they didn't really understand and they weren't educated about their programs. That was a huge missed opportunity. So we said, we got to do it different this year. This just isn't working. And I joined Yahoo last year, so it was a great opportunity for me to get more engaged with the organization and to talk to people where they are, right? You need to meet them where they are. And for our population, they tend to be pretty mobile. So high cost, low engagement, that's just an HR speak around what our biggest challenge is in relation to healthcare, but that can be addressed if we can focus people on being more engaged around their own health. So we engaged an organization, happened to have Engage in their name, H-Engage, and an outside consulting firm to help us with that, okay? And with that said, I'm going to play a quick video here. This is how we introduced the game. Keep talking about keeping it simple. This was the way we got people started. You can guess perhaps which one is me. Okay.
Hi, this is David. It's that time of year again to start thinking about open enrollment. Yahoo offers great benefits, and open enrollment is your opportunity to make choices and learn about your benefits. Wait a minute, this seems too routine, but our benefits are exciting. I know who can change things up. Our benefits director, Bernie. Bernie?
I'm on it, David. Hi, I'm Bernie. Look, David's right. Our benefits are awesome. Want to know how awesome? Well, let me break it down for you. Actually, that would be too easy. I challenge you to find out for yourself. So, let's have a little benefits fun. Really? Yes, really. An experiment with something totally new, innovative, and well, out there. A benefits beta, if you will. We've got a challenge that's even better than planking. And a flash mob doing the shuffle pirate robot doggy. It has to do with this. And these. And you. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, to get yourself in on the game. Get fellow Yahoos in on the game. Track down these different pieces, and maybe even find out something new. But wait, there's more! Our best players can win some really cool prizes. In fact, there's an early bird out there who's already won an iPad. Not Angry Birds, different game. But we can't tell you everything. Check out Backyard to learn more about how to get in the game and play to win. Don't wait though. You only have until November 15th. So start now and get in the game. So what do you think, David? Awesome? David? David?
Oh yeah, awesome! Game on!
Yahoo!
Had to get a marketing piece in there. Okay. I'll skip over the company. Hopefully you know about us as an organization. So we had a challenge. How do we raise awareness around our benefits? We're trying to keep things simple. You'll see there's 3 purple tiles up here. We had those throughout the campus. They stick to anything. And they really aren't Velcro on the back. They're just made of a material that sticks to anything. So they were all over elevators. They were everywhere. So that was part of our campaign, which I'll explain in a minute. So what we said was we need to do something different. And I know this is fast, and we really want to measure results. And I'm proud to say that in 14 days, we got 30% of our employees to participate in this exercise at a very busy time of year. So how did we do that? We knew we needed to raise awareness. Our benefits are great, and our employees are very fortunate to have them, but they're not educated around them. And we also realized that in the Valley, there's lots of other organizations we're competing with for talent. So that was our business justification. If you're looking for aha moments, the HR people, that's one of the ways that you can get your approval, if you will, for the expense. So we decided to do a game. We realized that in the end, this doesn't look simple. That's actually a work plan of all the communications that we did in just a 2-week period. I joke and say we put in a new EAP, our behavioral health support, around our programs for our employees as of January 1. We really put it in just to support our team because doing all this in 2 weeks was pretty amazing. We actually had 4-week lead time and a 2-week time period. So in 6 weeks, we accomplished all of this. And everyone else did the work. I was just lucky enough to be involved. So what we did was on the first day, there was actually a tile that said 11-1-11, and this was mailed to the home. This is it. It's all we did from a print perspective other than posters for the entire campaign. So we really tried to make it more mobile. That was on launch day. That's when the video was also available. One thing to note is we had an early bird putting out a chance to win an iPad. We got 400 people to participate the 3 days before it actually opened. And the only way people knew that was through these tiles and through posters. So believe it or not, some of the old ways of doing things does get individuals' attention. This was the major campaign on November 1. Then over the next week, we actually put out a total of 5 tiles. And the way they worked was there was a short sentence that you needed to text. And the first time you did that, to the phone number, it registered your phone. From there on out, all the engagement you had was specific to you, and the text messages were brief, and the response time was within 3 seconds of the text. Oh, that, by the way, we also had people send in pictures. That's me with my 2 dogs. We told them that find a clever way to use the tiles, and we got some great pictures that were sent in to use for testimonials. So the way it worked was, if you looked on the tile, actually there it said a message that said text something. This one happens to be Z your time. What would happen is when you texted just that message, you would get 3 points. It was all about a point game, and there were contests, as you noticed in the video, for those who won. And the idea was we had two things to communicate. One is we have a global week of rest. What a great thing. At the end of the year, you get a week off paid in the US. So we wanted to make sure people realized that and appreciated it. But also, when they responded back to that message, they got another one reminding them we actually had a vacation accrual policy change, and that was not so positive. So people needed to take vacation before the end of the year. So we actually accomplished two things with two texts to raise awareness around benefits, and we did it in just a few seconds. So what we found is people were very engaged by that. All right? So we got halfway through it, the first week, all of a sudden everything went quiet, and we realized we really didn't plan for the up and then the downside. So what we did is we created two quick posters and came up with an additional 2 tiles, and one of those was text back a 1, 3, or 5, whether you felt that this was a worthwhile exercise or not. And there were only 3 questions you had to answer. So keeping it simple, but trying to get behavior change by having people actually participate. We had one person get over 900 points because you could also get referrals for others that you referred. We had one person on the shuttle from the city that was going up to everyone every day on the bus and saying, are you in the game yet? And if you're not, will you please register me? I'll get more points. So there's something about competition. Game was over. Like I said, it only took 2 weeks. We announced the winners. We gave out hoodies, and believe it or not, people are still wearing them around the campus today. Although I didn't know what that flash mob whatever was until we actually did the video. So I'm a little bit older than many of you in this audience. Okay, so what did we find out? We got great participation. What was really interesting about this, and I'd love to share the data with someone. If you're ever interested, you can contact me directly. A lot of people did multiple interactions. They didn't do it just once to get in the game. They got in the game and stayed. And because we have an engineering population, we actually created a subgroup for them to try to find what was wrong. Because in the beginning, it talked about a beta. This was a trial. They had only done this with 2 other employers. So we knew there was some risk, and we told everybody that right up front. And in benefits and HR, we don't like to take risks. So if there's anything you can walk away from today, it's give it a try, tell people. I mean, think about it. Agile technology is what everything's about now, right? Forget the waterfall. It's about create it, put it out there, modify it along the way. And that's exactly what we did. So when we asked people what they felt about the benefits game, we got very high scores. We asked them the same thing about whether it was fun. That score was actually very high, which fits our culture. And then lastly, greater appreciation for benefits. This sort of made the whole exercise worthwhile because people had a much better appreciation for the plans that we sponsored. What did we learn quickly? Lessons. One is people love to send pictures in. So these are just some of the examples of what people were doing with the tiles. We told them to keep it clean. So these are the only ones that I know of that we're able to show you. And then last is what's next. Speaking, since this is mobile health, we are going to do another game this summer. That's our plan. And it's going to be focused on preventive care. We're going to get people engaged around how they need to be more active on this. We're going to make sure that the texting game requires them to do something. So if they make an appointment, if they go for their care visit, if they do their BMI screening, all of that will accumulate and they'll get certain points. But most importantly is they'll get recognition in the moment that they did something we asked them to. And at the very end of the day, it's for them, it's for their health, it's for their well-being. It's not just about the organization wanting to reduce expense. So we thought that was really an important point to make. The other thing I'll share, because people had a chance to write in comments, is they said make it harder, which we were sort of surprised. We were afraid they wouldn't text the message, but once you got people engaged, they're like, well, ask a question. You know, I want to beat out the person next to me, and if all they have to do is text a number in, anybody can do that. So because of our population, it told us we have to push a little bit, but if you push, people will respond. So that was last fall. Hopefully we'll have another story to share a year from now. And that was incredibly fast, but I hope it gave you an idea of what we did to try to get people engaged. The reality is nobody speaks on these anymore, but they text all day long. So we decided let's act like our employees do, because they're our consumers at the end of the day. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Am I not connected? I'll take this over.
Sure.
So simple, simple, simple. The 877 thing we did with the mobile comments, I got feedback that there was like 96% participation. Congratulations. So we triggered you. It was really easy. There was kind of built-in motivation. Good for you guys. Reman. Wow, you guys kind of surprised me. Reman Child is going to talk about OhLife. There was a time about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where somebody told me about this really simple way to journal your life. You just get an email and reply to it. And I don't know why I started doing it, but I did. And it's become a habit for me. It's just really, despite the craziness and the busy schedule that I have, I'm using your product pretty much every day to chronicle my life, and because it's so simple. So I wanted you to come here and help people see really how simple it can be, and that simplicity changes behaviors, and I think simplicity is the key to creating habits. Reman, you were also on the cover of Business 2.0 and CNN Money.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay, well, good for you.
Yeah, it was for a different startup, but...
And how did that affect you?
Well, it was actually pretty interesting because that was right when, so that was about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and me and the guy that I was working with, we had just quit our jobs and we had just started doing startups, and it was literally like 2 or 3 months later we were on the cover of Business 2.0 through a random series of events, and from there we just got a lot of press, we had a lot of meetings, like we were completely bootstrapped and we had no idea what we were doing, so it was, yeah, it was very exciting.
Well, tell us about OhLife. Please welcome Reman to the Mobile Health stage.
All right, so today I'm going to talk about the benefits of an interactive email and why you might want to consider using this type of email to help your users take baby steps to achieve big results. So first off, let's define the term interactive email. So it's not the kind of email that you get from most companies, which are basically just text and links. The purpose of those kinds of emails is to get you to click a link to go to their website, where you then perform some sort of action. But rather, an interactive email is an automated email that you send to your users that they can actually reply to. So they don't have to visit your site, because all the data that you're asking for is in that email reply. Oops. So for example, the site I'm working on, OhLife, is an online journal. And traditionally, we'd probably have approached this by doing something like sending them a daily reminder to come to our site, where they would then write their entry. But if you're doing this all the time, it's a lot of work. You have to click a link, you're in your email inbox, you have to click a link, remember your password, log in, and only then can you really think about writing your entry. So instead, what we do is we have them reply to that email that we're sending. We just ask them, how'd your day go? And right from their email inbox, they can write their entry for the day. They hit send, and that's all the work that they have to do. It's instantly saved to their account. So when you're working with interactive emails, you get 3 things for free that are normally problems for other apps. The first is that your users don't have to remember to come to your site. They're already checking their emails, and conveniently, that's exactly where you are. The second is that your users don't have to learn a new interface. Replying to emails is something they're already doing dozens of times a day, so responding to your email is something that will come pretty naturally to them. And the third is that email is everywhere. It's on mobile, it's on tablets, and it's on computers. So you don't really need to spend time building apps for different platforms because email is already baked in. So when I was coming up with this talk, I tried to take a step back and think about what the term baby steps means and what the phrase, baby steps to it, or how you take baby steps to achieve great results means. And I came up with 5 things that we can learn from babies in app development. And the first is to make it simple to start. So this one's pretty self-explanatory, but when you're teaching a baby to walk, there's really no need to overwhelm it with lots of information. I don't think that there are any parents out there that are teaching the biomechanics of walking to a baby, right? Rather, they're just focusing on getting it to take its very first step. And so the same thing goes with your new users. When a new user comes to your site, you really need to focus on getting them to perform that first key action. For example, when a new user comes to our site, there's really only one thing we want them to do, and that's to go to their email inbox and reply to the email that we just sent them. But when we first started out, this is actually what our welcome page looked like. And it's a lot of text that's telling them about the features that we have and why they're going to love using OhLife, but it didn't perform very well. So we did a lot of split testing, and we came up with this version, which performed much, much better. it's much more direct. It basically just tells them what just happened, which is that we had just emailed them, what they need to do right now, which is to reply to that email, and what happens afterwards, which is that that email is then saved to our site. So they actually got to experience why it was cool, rather than us having to explain it to them through a wall of text. So try to keep that first touch really simple, and focus on the one thing you want your users to do, and get them to do that. So the second point is to focus on one step at a time. So what's really interesting when you're watching videos of babies that are first learning to walk is that they really are focusing on just one step at a time. That single step is the only thing that they're concentrating on. And this is actually where interactive emails work really well. Because when you're, the only thing that your users need to worry about is responding to that one email that you had just sent them. So in our case, we're an online journal, right? And if we were to ask somebody to just sit down and write their entire life story in one sitting, it would be an impossible thing for them to do. But if you break it up into small tasks, like once every couple of days, suddenly it becomes something that almost anyone can do, and you get that same big end result. So if you have a big task that you want your users to do, try to break it up into much smaller pieces that they can do over time. So the third point is to have a low bar for success. And this one's pretty similar to the last one, except that the emphasis here really is on making each one of those steps have a low bar for success. Make each one of those steps really easy to do, and make your users feel good for doing it. So for example, we needed them to write their first entry right. And at this point, they're in their email inbox, but we need to figure out what we're going to write in that email. And so we tried some different things, and one of those was that we gave them ideas for what they should write about, like, did you see any of your friends today? But then we tried a different approach. To get them to write their first entry, we just repeated the same sentiment over and over. And that's if they wrote anything, they did a good job. Even if it was just one sentence, they did a good job. And this performed much, much better. So if, especially in the beginning, or especially for your new users, you really want to make them feel like any amount of work they do is good, even if it's not that much. So the fourth point is to keep them interested. And this one's really important if you're building an app that's on top of these interactive emails, especially if you're emailing them at a high frequency. So high frequency is good in that your users won't forget about you, but it also runs a much higher risk that they're going to get bored or tired of seeing the exact same thing all the time. So what we did to approach this problem is that we actually include a random past entry into each of their emails. And so ideally, after they've been using our service for a while, this random past entry is something that they've actually completely forgotten. And so this serves two purposes. The first is that it's interesting content, it's directly related to them since they wrote it. But the second is that it actually really positively reinforces why they're using our service, which is to capture those memories that they might have forgotten otherwise. And so you should try to keep it interesting, and one way to do that is to just repackage the data that they've already been giving you. And the fifth point is to figure out what's wrong. Now, babies can't talk, and a lot of the times you're not going to know why they're crying. And so the same thing sort of goes for your users. If at some point when they're using your app, they get bored or frustrated, they're just going to leave, and you're going to have no idea why. So to combat this, you really need to collect feedback at the point of failure to understand what's going wrong. So at this point for us, after running all the previous tests, we actually found that the majority of our users were responding to that first email, which meant that they sort of understood how our service worked. But there was a portion of those users that weren't making it past their first week. They were writing their first couple of entries, but then they would drop off, and we had no idea why. So what we did was that we just asked them. At our point of failure, which was the unsubscribe page, we put a feedback form. And we were actually really surprised at how many people ended up responding. It was something like 87% of the users that were unsubscribing ended up telling us exactly why they were unsubscribing. And what was more surprising was that all of this feedback ended up converging to the same 4 or 5 basic points, which gave us a really good place to start to try to figure out a better new user experience. So if you're trying to figure out what's wrong, just collect feedback, and a good place to do that is at the points of failures. So just to recap, make it simple to start, focus on one step at a time. For each of those steps, have a low bar for success. Keep them interested, and use feedback to figure out what's wrong. That's it.
I have so many questions for you, Bernie, and you, Reman, and we're going to hang on to them and let Michael take the stage. Michael is Dr. Michael Wu. Got his doctorate from Berkeley in all things biophysics. And I've been impressed. I noticed him on Twitter, and I started reading what he was posting online, and I was like, this guy gets it. He's really interesting. And we'd never met in person before this day, but I wanted Michael to come and talk about games and how games fit into this idea of simplicity. Michael.
It's my pleasure to be here. We actually met once at Persuasive Technology, I think 3 years ago. Okay, I see. Okay, so I know nothing about mobile health, but I'm going to tell you about baby steps in games. Hopefully that will reveal a little bit of insights into how you could structure your games so they are effective. Okay, so we all know that. Before I start, let me just ask, how many here are gamers? Okay, how many play games at all? How many enjoy playing games? Okay, good, about half, okay. Oh, okay. Somehow my screen didn't show up?
Yes, it's wrong resolution, sir.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, how many people have worked on a product in the health space that uses game dynamics, some aspect of gaming? Great. How many people were doing that like 10 years ago? Wow. How many people hope to do it in the future that have not? Great. Awesome. So as you know, there's been a lot of buzz about gamification. Some people love the word. Some people hate the word. There's been sort of a little bit of a land rush in the funding arena. I'll look to Gus on that, whether they're going to get funded or not. And I think this is one reason that in the crowd, in the din, and all the noise of games and game mechanics, I really like Michael's approach. Back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're back. So Lithium did start about 11 years ago. So we were doing gamification before there were gamification. So anyway, we know good games are very engaging, right? When you're playing a game, you got to be pretty engaged, right? And a great game can even be addicting, right? So games somehow have this magical ability of getting us to get into the habit of playing them, right? Whereas when you try to do habit formation in other contexts, we know that's difficult, right? That's why we're all here, right? But games somehow have this magical power. And games could be simple as Angry Birds or Farmville, or it could be really complex like World of Warcraft or Call of Duty. I think these are games some of you kids or some of might play, right? They don't need to be video games. They could be simply just pokers or one of those really famous Sudoku. How many play Sudoku here? At some point in time. Good. All right. In fact, Sudoku is seen as such an addictive kind of a game that they actually made it into toilet papers. So people actually play when they're doing one sitting. Okay, so this actually spawned a whole industry called gamification, okay, because games has this somewhat magical power, and they're able to drive behavior and form habits. And so Gartner actually in 2011 predicted that, in this hype cycle, that in 2014, 70% of the Fortune 2000 company will have at least one gamification application, okay? So what is gamification anyway? The idea is really, really simple. I mean, half of you enjoy playing games and being rewarded, right? But there are things we don't like to do for whatever reason. And the idea of gamification really is to take some attribute of a game and apply them in a non-game context, right, with predictability. So what are these game attributes? So a lot of them are essentially game mechanics, game dynamics, but they could go beyond that. They could be like game design principles, the psychology of a player, and then even the narrative, even the story. Some people actually play games just to finish the story, to see how the story turns out. And they could be incentive too, right? We've seen the case with iPad, right? Good incentive. And you want to drive any behavior you want. You could essentially drive, engagement, interactions, even to the extreme of obsession and addiction, right? And you do that in a non-game context. Because if you already have a game, you already should be using game attribute to drive game-like behavior, right? You don't need to gamify a game if it's a good game, unless it's a really, really bad game, right? So, okay. So what can this do for your business? So Lithium as a platform, we actually help large brands engage their customer and help their customer work together. So some of the 3 most common business use case of gamification is essentially deepens engagement. And then that works both internally and externally, for employees and between customers, right? Remember, customers are not obligated to work with each other, right? But if we gamify it, and now they have fun actually working, helping each other, then they will, okay? And sustain loyalty, and then also onboard new users, right? And we've seen examples of that already. So there's always a so what, right? So what is that it saves you money, right? Best Buy realized $5 million of cost saving per year. And essentially, we can actually drive cost-saving behavior, self-help behavior, but we can even drive people to purchase more. Like Sephora has shown this with a case study with us that in our platform, in our community platform, average community members spend about 2.5 times. And there are these really passionate consumers in our community. They actually spend 10 times more. So pretty amazing. Okay, so this is mobile health. So an application that's in the health space is essentially the Nike Plus, right? Or the Fuel Band that some of you are wearing right now. Okay? So what's the magic behind gamification? If you ask a lot of the practitioners out there, they would tell you that it's probably these game mechanics and game dynamics, right? And then, let's see how that actually works in a real game. So I'm sure everybody here know what Angry Bird is, right? So I'm going to go through this really quickly, right? So there's immediate feedback in Angry Bird, right? So all of those game mechanics and game dynamics that you've seen before fall into some categories. And I'll show you a spectrum of them. And the first one is immediate feedback. So first, there's control. You could control the bird angle, right? And there's physics, right? Physics is immediate. The iPad is a really good example that uses physics really well. You swipe it, it goes. It's just like if you do that to an ordinary object, it flips, right? So, and there's points. When you did something, there's points that give you immediate feedback, right? And then just when you finish a game, you unlock the next level. You have achievement. So these are things that you achieve over time, right? Now, when you start to get a hang of how to play Angry Bird, then you realize, oh, there's actually different kind of birds, right? Different kind of bird have different ability, right? There's several kinds that this kind of blows things up. And then once you start to get a hang of that, right, then you start realizing that, oh, there's actually different kind of pigs too, right? So the key is that every step when you're leveling up, right, you just have to gain incrementally a very tiny bit of skill and knowledge, right? You just have to get one little bit more of knowledge about how to play this game, or how to win this game, right? And once you get a hang of that, right, and then the next thing you do, you realize that, well, actually there's a leaderboard, right? I had to kind of beat my friends, right? So all of these kind of game mechanics and game dynamic essentially fits into this spectrum of gamification. So they actually range from the really short time scale of reinforcement to the really long time scale, right? And they actually care about the metric that they use are different. And for example, like achievements typically comes in the form of like level unlocking or a badge that you've seen, with Badgeville and other gamification platforms out there. Okay, so now, still haven't answered the question of why is games so engaging, right? And one of the reasons is because games get the player into a state of flow, okay? How many here actually know the state of flow? Okay, some of you do, okay. So flow is essentially this optimal state of intrinsic motivation, right? And you really immerse in what you do, and then you tend to forget about your physical feeling. You forget, for example, when I'm solving a really difficult math problem, I go into flow. I don't feel tired. I don't feel hungry, and my wife worries about me for that. So Csikszentmihalyi, which we met actually at the Persuasive Technology back then, actually characterized the condition that's necessary to go into flow. Okay, so he says basically the skill that the challenge that you face have to match your skill in order to go into that flow, right? If it's so flow is this kind of fine line between certainty and uncertainty, right? People like to be in the control state, but if you really are in this control state, you're so good at it, you're doing it every single day, you're in perfect control of it, then what happens? You get really bored, right? And then, so people also like to be aroused, right? But if the challenge is too great, then they also get into the frustration, they can't do it, right, state. So this flow is this fine line between kind of arousal and control, right? But the challenge, the interesting thing about the flow state is that people acquire skill over time, right? So what used to be hard or engaging when you're in the state of flow, over time you get better at what you do, so you move into the boredom state, right? Okay? Now, while obviously the simple task is to just, pick another task that's more challenging, right? You could actually, pick a more difficult task. In the game, you just, go to the next level, kill bigger monster, right? But in real life, it's actually very hard to pick a task that just matches your skill, okay? It's typically more of the same thing, or if it's too hard, right? So if it's like this, just a little bit too hard, it's okay, because you just have to learn a little bit more skill, right? Your learning curve is pretty shallow. You just learn a little bit more skill to move back into flow. And then, but in reality, most of the time, is that our boss will assign us a task. Okay, you did a great job. Next task is much, much harder. And we move out of the flow. We have to go a long time before we actually get back into it, right? Okay. So good games are designed to maximize flow, right? Think about how do you maximize flow here? Think about this. How do you actually maximize flow? Well, you do it this way, right? Okay? So games are designed in such a way that people are kind of, have this, they control the level of difficulties between each level such that the player always takes a baby step relative to his ability, right? So notice that in the bottom there, the ability gap actually gets bigger and bigger over time, but that's okay because relative to the ability that he has gained, right, it's actually it's a baby step, right? When he's actually right there, relative to the ability he already have, that little big gap at the last gap is actually very tiny to what he perceives as his ability. Okay, so as you can see, games are really just a structured way for people to take baby steps, right? They level you up in such a way that every single step you take is a baby step. At the time when you need to take that step. Okay, so, today is all about baby steps. So I'm going to say that games are really a structure of puppy steps. So thank you.
Gus, come on up here. So our last speaker of the session, then we'll have some Q&A, is Gus Tai. Gus is at Trinity Ventures, and he specializes in early stage startups, helping companies get rolling and so on. He was, about a year ago, you were a judge/advisor to the class that Nima and I did on calming technology, and now you're involved with that class, right?
Yep, one of the co-teachers.
It's really good to have you here. I think you and one other VC are the only VCs on the program, so you see lots of things, lots of stuff going on, and I wanted to get that perspective on the program, especially you, since you've been involved with some of the work we've been doing. Everybody, please welcome Gus Tai.
Thank you, BJ. Is that on? Can you hear me? Great. Let me just. And today I'm not going to talk at all about venture capital or startups or anything like that, but instead I'm going to talk about something very personal. And I first wanted to start by mentioning that I do have a confession to make, and that confession is I'm quite embarrassed to be here, but I'm looking forward to telling you why. Over the last several years, I've been suffering from some very unusual obsessive thoughts for me. And these obsessive thoughts have been quite immobilizing, painful, and just kind of irritating to have. And so in order to cope and get relief and release from those obsessive thoughts, I embarked upon a program of some baby steps, and I wanted to share those techniques with you today. I'm sure a lot of you are reflecting upon or asking yourselves, so what might those obsessive thoughts be? Could it be around sports? Could it be around answering email or just falling behind and trying to catch up and learn more about companies? Or my wife would think that's my obsession on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which happens to be the best written TV show ever in history. Ahead of The Sopranos, I believe that. Other critics believe that too. No, it's not that, and it's not of another type, which you might also think things like donuts, although I love donuts, and it's not about bacon either. In fact, it's actually something that really caught me off guard starting a handful of years ago. And as I mentioned, it was quite immobilizing, and it was related to shame. And so I started having this thought in my head of, I hate myself. I was quite surprised how this began. The journey for me began a handful of years ago when my father was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And that cancer, and all cancers I'm sure are terrible, this one in particular had as a manifestation cancerous growths on his body, disfiguring him, and it was quite painful apparently. And when I would look in the eyes of my father, I would see the suffering, and occasionally he would share that with me and share that with our family. And I was stuck in this place of saying, is there anything I could do to help? Can I help cure him? Obviously not. Can I help provide relief? Yes, I could to a degree, but it was quite clear he was suffering materially. And I found it very hard to do. And then my obsessive mind, my logical mind, my mind that I get paid for to reason, to figure things out, to forecast the future, which is what I'm paid to do, I'm just like, okay, this looks pretty damn bad, and I don't know what to do. When he finally passed away, moments of shock, but also moments of sadness, moments of relief, though, because he was suffering quite materially. And so we tried to reframe it, tried to view it as, well, he was prepared to die, he was ready for it, he was thoughtful and reflective on that. But all that said, what I was surprised to learn was that what was ringing through my head was, I'm sorry I let you down. I couldn't do anything about it. And it was tough, and it was surprising, and I was using my logical mind at first saying, well, how did I let him down? But that part stuck with me. And then it evolved from I'm sorry I let you down to I'm guilty I didn't do anything. Then I'm wrong, then I'm bad. And then I'm bad and I hit myself. And it kept going on and on and on. And in all of this confusion, everything I would use about my mind to try to rationalize and reason with this other part of me that was just damning me every single day, many, many times, would fall back into this script of this obsessive thought process. This is one of many scripts. I don't remember the others, which is fine, but it's characteristic of it. And so I was really stuck with this problem, which was this script was not allowing me to heal, and part of me was not allowing me to release and let go. And the part of me that I had a strong identity with, which is my mind, my reason, along with my emotions and such, just was undermining me. So the question is, how could I stop feeding my mind? And a friend of mine said, well, a lot of different things you could do, but maybe you should do something else. And so I was like, okay, so what could you do that's something else? And she referred to an old technology. And these are the baby steps that I use that I would suggest that could be quite helpful to the degree that you ever find yourself in a situation where you have thoughts that aren't helpful for you, that you want to get release from and relief from. And those were to engage somatically and to engage another part of my body, my mind, that actually didn't require thinking. It was engage my body and then to chant. So what I did on the body side was I wanted to create an amulet. And a kind friend of mine sent me this beautiful card, a quote, after my father passed away. And so I took this card and I folded it up into something that I could carry with me. And it was about this large, and I carried it in my pocket. I took a picture of it and put it as a screensaver for my iPhone, so the mobility of it was quite helpful. I always had it with me. And the trigger was either I hate myself or I'm bad. As soon as I did it, I mean, at first it was kind of hard to get used to it, but I cranked on it, which I'm skilled at doing through repetition. As soon as I had that thought, I started rubbing it. And I was rubbing. Found that wasn't quite good enough, but the chant was helpful. And so I used a loving kindness chant, which was as soon as I started rubbing the thing, I tried to say this chant 10 times. May I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be healthy, and may I live life with ease. One tip, if you're going to use chants and your mind is hijacked like mine was, don't try to actually focus on what the words say. Do pick words that can sink in and provide relief, because subconsciously your body will process those kind of words. And then one ironic thing I thought was interesting when I was doing this is that the phrases can't be controversial with your own mind, because they'll be converted and hijacked and turned against you. So actually my initial chant did not have even the statement, may I be peaceful, because I thought I wasn't entitled to be peaceful. I thought I should atone and redeem for my sins, and so I'm bad and I shouldn't be peaceful. I picked something else, like, may I ultimately be peaceful, and then as I got healthier, I picked peaceful. The results of after doing this were actually quite great. So what's great is that I can actually stand here and feel at peace and at ease with that part of my journey. And that wasn't the case for quite some time. And I just feel a broader sense of a richer life. And I could tell when I was healing through this chanting and through this somatic reaction that when you're healing like this, things like curiosity come back. And I started measuring, like, because I am analytical, hey, I wonder how many times they have this trigger thought, and that was kind of fun. The other thing, nonetheless, outside of that, was that I did want to comment on two observations I developed through this part of this journey, one on grief and one on shame, because I thought there were a lot of misunderstandings about these two concepts. First, on grief. What grief really is the intersection between love and loss. And as such, it has the attributes and characteristics of both of love and loss, but I feel there's a lot of confusion among many people to think that grief is more around loss than of love. Loss is about disappointment about a thing. What love really is the bountiful flowing of goodwill and positive emotions from yourself to others or to yourself. And with grief and with a loss, it gets cut off. And so when people who struggle with grief and they wonder about grief and whether it's allowable, they'll ask things like, when should someone be done grieving? And what I want you to tell yourself, if you ever catch yourself asking yourself that, is that what you really should be asking is, when should I stop loving? And the answer is, you shouldn't. The real question to ask is, how do I take this painful, suffering, anguish, to the degree that we have it, and transform it into something bittersweet, where you allow space for yourself, for the tears, for the sorrow, and you wrap it around with gentleness, with compassion, and other things to make it tolerable and acceptable and part of you. And there are many techniques to add color back to your life through that. I'm not going to talk about them, but for things such as ritualization, reframing, and relating. And just as an example, when we ultimately buried my father's urn last fall, we had all of our kids participate by commemorating a story about my grandfather, along with some object that they would leave in the urn. And so we had a wonderful time with this ritual relating to each of us as we went through this. This is the picture my daughter painted, which I love, has my father, me playing the piano, which I would do with my father, my daughter in the window, and of course their dog Rocket, which I thought was endearing. On shame, so what shame really is, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding here as well. Shame is a defensive mechanism that's very human and universal and acceptable and fine, that gets triggered when you feel the vulnerability of love and belonging. The problem with shame, and so when you feel that you may not belong, when you're at risk of belonging, you might not be worthy, you might not be good enough, that's when shame can come out. The problem with shame is that many people are ashamed of being ashamed, of having shame, and so it hardens. And when it hardens, it cuts off your heart from connecting with other people. And so I want to mention that there's an alternative to that, to allowing shame being a mechanic for this type of vulnerability around love. And that is, the alternative is you can recognize that there are some people you could connect with. And as you connect with them and relate to them, know that they'll greet you with supportive hands. And when they greet you with these supportive hands, know that as you share your vulnerability, that it's okay and you'll be okay. And that's an alternative. For me, I mentioned up front that I'm embarrassed to be here. And what I'm embarrassed to be here about is that I'm still embarrassed about that I'm ashamed of grieving. And so that is something I continue to work with. But I do know I have an alternative. And the alternative is, for example, looking around this room and seeing all the open hearts and the kind eyes. My alternative here is to know that when I share with you, that you'll receive with grace, my comments that I've never said before. The Dad, I love you, I miss you, and I'm okay. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. Let me kind of reiterate the landscape of baby steps, how simplicity changes behavior. We saw Bernie talk about one-time behavior change, getting people involved. Reman about something very simple that will create a habit. Michael unpacked games as structured baby steps. When people talk about gamification and the magic of that, I don't see it as motivation being the magic, but structuring the sequence of steps that you need to do. That's where I think the real win is there. And that could be a long debate and discussion. And Gus's really personal account of being in a dark spot and addressing that through creating a series of steps he could do. What you didn't say, and I think maybe people recognize, you get into bad habits through baby steps as well. The way that baby steps work can be good and bad and so on. What I really liked about the closer there, Gus, and the way it kind of brought it together was, I think as behavior designers, as health innovators, the more we can recognize how behavior operates in our own life, the more we can understand it not just as random, but see it systematically, the better intuitions we will have in designing experiences for others. I'm a big, big fan of exploring and trying behavior change on yourself a lot, and then recognizing what works, what doesn't, and seeing what works in successful programs like Weight Watchers and that kind of thing. We're going to take some questions from the audience, so go ahead and raise your hand and we'll get mics to you. But I have a question for the panelists who want to take this on. As you did something really simple, as you rolled out something that was probably simpler than the wellness people have ever done, and so on, and as you looked at, how did you resist the temptation in yourself or the pressure from others, like, wow, you got to do this big thing, simple and is not good enough. We've got to go for the big leap, not the baby step. How do you deal with that? Because I think, it's not about convincing you baby steps matter. You wouldn't be here unless you knew that. But how do you handle that back home with colleagues who are like, yeah, I'm unimpressed with the baby steps. So you got somebody to floss one tooth. So what? I think that's a huge deal. Get you to floss one tooth, boom, you're on your way. How did you address that? Anyone of you just grab the mic and...
Is it on? Okay. The way we addressed it was actually, we learned something afterwards, because with the gamification, I just wanted to share, we did an analysis of our employees last fall, and there's 6 categories that the Futures Company puts individuals in based on their demographics and the makeup of the individuals. And what we found is over 80% of our employees fell in two categories: in it for fun and not right now. And what that basically means is that they're very competitive. They like a game, they like a chance to win, but they also like to look good and feel good. So that was a great thing for us to find out. Luckily, we found that out afterwards, so the good news was we were aligned, which is probably why we got such good participation. And the other was not right now, which means I'm educated, I'm smart, I know what I need to do, I just don't have the time to do it right now. And so I think that was a big learning for us, is when you talk about small steps, is just keep in mind people often know what those are. They just don't feel like right now they have the time for that. And so that's why I think this small steps, baby steps, one at a time is so important, because it forces us to think like where they are. And in our business, that's not the way we normally do things. So it's definitely a paramount shift for us.
Okay. Gus, let me call you out in the mic. So you took a big step today, a big step.
Yep.
However, I would guess that there were a series of baby steps that got you to this point without it. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes. Well, so naturally, I am obsessive, and I do tend to pick baby steps, and that's why I chose those baby steps for my process. For this point in time, which I view as quite seminal, my journey of healing, it started out, it snowballed. So actually, as you would so kind of asked me to speak, I was thinking about different topics, and then just something gnawed at me. And then I started working on it, and it was actually it's scary. Yes, it is scary, but I think for me, I sometimes I lean into fear. So, and so that actually might be the motivation. When I feel fear, I wind up doing it. And like, oh, well, I'm okay. I survived. Thanks, everybody. Right, so.
Okay. Awesome. Michael.
Yeah, so one of the things that we find through our data from our platform, I'm actually a data scientist. I crunch numbers pretty much most of the time, other than I'm coming out here. So is that even though when you design a game, so the key is really to have short reinforcement cycle in the beginning, right? And then you slowly lengthen that reinforcement cycle, and then you slowly move them from this, essentially teach them to gain more ability, right? So it turns out that if you do that for everyone, some of the people will actually learn and move up to that habituation curve much faster than other people. So to answer your question is that, even though a lot of people will still remain at that, the short cycle and they're not really engaged, there will be a few, typically about like a little less than 1% or maybe actually it's about 0.5% of the population will be really engaged and super engaged, and they will actually move up to that, create this habit. They will come to the community, our platform, because of it's gamified, it's kind of fun, but then they move through that rank, the level up really quickly, and then they tend to stay. They become their habit. They stay, they come back because they get something out, they learn something, and they see the value of it. So, and they can move up this, this curve really fast. Mm-hmm. So even though a lot of people don't, wanted this big thing, you could show them that there are a few people who achieve that, so it's achievable. So as you just have to take more of these baby steps, more people will be able to achieve that.
Great. Reman?
So I'm kind of in a different situation in that I only have to convince one other person. But I think when we had first started, actually, it's kind of a foreign concept to us in that, taking baby steps when you're releasing a product is really hard in that there's the fear of failure. So in our first startup, we'd actually taken a long time relative to the time we take now to release our product, and we didn't show it to anyone. We tried to make it perfect. We tried adding all these different features, and and we just did it, right? And then it didn't work, and it sort of failed, and then we sort of went through Y Combinator, and what's interesting about them is they really have the idea of fast iteration. It's just launch early, iterate often, and we sort of went there, but even then it still took us a long time, and I feel like at this point it's second nature because we realized that the easiest way is just get data really quickly and just fail fast.
Well, what's your reaction when you see somebody overthinking, doing the big, complicated, don't show it to users, add features? How do you respond to that?
I mean, I try to explain that. It's hard because I think it's, to someone that doesn't really understand it, it's something that is a very foreign concept, right? And I think that you can explain it to them and try, but like in the end of the day, I think the biggest thing that I think of is that they're just afraid that it's not a good idea. Like if you talk to one person or two people and you're all sort of in your own little black box, then it's very easy to be excited about something.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most exciting things about startups is that you have hope in the beginning. But you really need to make early contact with users to actually see whether it's a good idea or not.
So important, so important. Do we have a question in the audience? Let's take, do we have somebody over here waiting? Okay. Let's do this. We are going to play a game after a couple announcements. So this is a good lead into the next sessions about rapid launch and product iteration. You guys stay on the stage, and you can be judges of a game we're going to do here in a second. But before we get to the game, how many people, Nike, have the Nike Plus? Yeah, who's got that? Great. Linda, Fogg Phillips over there, raise your hand. You have to turn those in before you leave Stanford, I know. So yeah, sad. So Linda will be at the table out there at this break and tomorrow afternoon to collect them from you. So please do turn those in. We'll talk a little bit more about that later today and tomorrow, but those are that you want to turn them in, and you can do that. Let's play a game that starts with all of you standing up. So everyone, please stand up. We're going to call this the Mobile Health Super Brain Game. You guys can help be judges. We're playing 2 quick games in a row. Yeah, awesome. All right, I'm going to read a trivia fact of one of the sponsors. So pick up your program and look at the back. And if you guess the right sponsor, you can remain standing. It's sort of like Survivor, Mobile Health Survivor. You ready? Here is the trivia fact. We're a federation of 15,000 doctors. Don't say it. Keep it in mind. Who do you think it is? Look at your program. Point to it. You're on your honor here. OK, ready? It's Kaiser. How many got it right? Those who did not, sit down, please. OK. You're still on the island, the rest of you. You ready? Number 2. We started delivering pharmaceutical products via covered wagon. Don't say it. Think. Which of those sponsors? Delivered versus covered wagon first. You guys help judge that they're being honest? Yeah. It is McKesson. How many got it right? The rest of you sit down. Wow, who else did you pick? That's great. OK, next. Our headquarters survived the 1906 earthquake. And the headquarters was a printing press, if that helps at all. Probably doesn't. You've got somebody in mind? You got it? It is Pill Jogger. How many got that right? The rest of you sit down. Wow, we're getting down to, wow, how many remain? How many remain? OK, we have a really nice prize. Well, we have a really weird prize for the winner. OK, next. Now, if you get the next 3 in a row right, maybe I'll give you like a consolation prize. So even if you're sitting down, play along, see if you can get the next 3 row, nail it. Now, my lab's a sponsor of this, but we're not part of the game, so don't pick us. Our first client was Britney Spears. OK, people standing up. What do you say? Mobile Commons is correct. Who got it right? OK, we're down to it. OK, next. We paid $35 to have our logo created. People standing up. It's Nike. Who got it right? And we have, OK, one more. Let's see if you get the bonus prize. Oh, there's actually 2 more. See if you get these both right. We have a small step program. Answer is American Heart Association. Is anybody sitting down got 3 in a row? You can pop back up, I guess. We'll see how this goes. See, I'm making this up as we go along. Final one. We have the first center in the world focusing on an alarming rate of heart disease among South Asians. El Camino Hospital. Did I miss one? Yes, I think I did. We've been innovating in patient-centered care since 1930. Palo Alto Medical Foundation. Who got all of them right? Anybody? Raise your hand. Seriously, if you got them all right, seriously, you should be applauded. How many only missed one of those? All right, awesome. Nice job. OK. so that was a game of sorts. Now this is where your judging actually comes in. I didn't expect you to be like clairvoyant or whatever, read minds and know who is telling truth or not. We have beach balls along the side of the room. It wouldn't be a BJ Fogg event without beach balls, right? So people on the side of the room, everybody go grab a beach ball and pick it up. Don't throw it yet. This is sort of your test of willpower, if you believe in that concept. Just hold on to it. That one we're going to use in a future game. So all the beach balls have a person attached to them. Wow, Ronnie's going for the big one. Hang on, a test of willpower. What we're going to do you see the multicolored balls? We want those to keep going while somebody hold up an orange ball. Great. Hold up the green ball. How many green balls do we have out there? Okay, what I want you to do as an audience is sort orange from green, make sure the orange all get into one spot together, all the green get into one spot together. I'm not going to tell you where, all the while you keep the multicolored balls going, right? So those keep going, and then you as an audience, as a collective group, have to figure out, are the orange balls going there and the green here, da-da-da, whatever? Okay, judges, you tell me when they're done. And if you see a shift, you can call it out on your mark. Get set. Music, please. Go. What's happening? Watch what happens. How's it going?
It's good.
Okay.
It's the orange.
I want you each to make one observation compliment.
Okay.
We'll wrap it by having you do one observation and compliment of the game.
I think
How we doing? The oranges are coming together almost. We have a stray green. Oh, we have an innovator here. Very good. Very good. Okay. When are we done? 5. Are we done?
Yep.
Give yourselves a round of applause. Grab the mics. Okay, speakers. Well, starting with Gus. Make a brief comment / observation / critique of what just happened.
Clever work. Nice job at signaling for the colored balls, so I like that.
Okay, Michael.
I think there's a wisdom of the crowd that will work here. It's like, you guys don't coordinate with each other, but somehow you figure out where the orange ball should go and where the green ball should go.
And nobody's ever played that game before, I guess. We may never play it again. We'll see. How do you say? Reman.
I thought it was interesting because halfway through there was actually a deadlock where there were orange balls on that side and orange balls on that side. And there was sort of this point where you actually had to decide which way to send them over because it was about half-half.
Bernie.
Last thing is you're supposed to use purple. Okay, this is Yahoo. So just so you know, next time, forget the green and the orange. But actually, we were talking about that there was a stubborn orange group over here that was refusing to go over to the orange over there.
Orange,
so
very good.
There's stubborn people in the audience.
Okay.
Good.
Good job, everybody. 2:55, you're back here. I'm going to ask the speakers to stay up here in front so you can come talk to them. We'll see you back here in 20-some odd minutes. Great work. We'll see you later. Nice job.